That's great. Go ahead, make your jokes, Mr. Jokey. Joke maker. But let me hit you with some knowledge. You should quit now and save yourself the embarrassment of losing with these losers in Las Vegas, LaFleur.
Alliteration aside, I think I'll take my chances in the tournament.
Yeah, you will take your chances.
I know. I just said that.
I know you just said that.
Okay, I'm not sure where you're going with
Well,
this.
I'm not sure where you're going with this.
That's what I just said.
That's what I'm saying to you.
All right?
Touche.
All right, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. I'm your host, Gus Manti, and thank you to everyone tuning in today. We have a podcast full of Q&A, a little bit of an update on the northwoods fishing. Nothing crazy tonight. We have no interviews, but we definitely have some more interviews in store in the future, so stay tuned for those. And on with me tonight is my brother, Max Manti. How are you doing tonight, Max?
I'm doing good. It's good to be here. Limited fishing for me after Vermilion, still kind of coming down off of that high and for the next few weeks here. So glad to be on tonight, get to kind of fill the gaps, to fill the fishing void over the next few weeks by hopping on with you guys and chopping it up. Gus, I see you're sipping on something over there. What do you got? I think you might have gone back to the old peach bushes. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, you're seeing correctly. I got the Busch Light Peach, so that's an old staple
Nice.
and standby. So I don't know if you guys are sipping on anything else. Max, you got something?
I'm sipping on a special root beer, one of them UP root beers, if you catch my drift.
Those will put you in a good spot for later. You're gonna sleep well.
Is that Brian's voice I hear?
Yeah, I'm more curious to hear how our boy Brian's doing over there. Another big weekend for the kid, or what?
No, shockingly, I did not spend the day today hungover watching Rory McIlroy. I took the weekend off from watching golf. Shout out Victor Hovland though. Incredible couple weeks here. I mean, guy is lights out. Gotta love him. Nothing to hate about him. But yeah, I'm currently little fantasy draft going on in the background of the pod right now. So trying to craft up a team in a 14-man league. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but excited to talk some fishing other than that.
How's the squad shaping up so far?
You know, I went heavy on wideouts, my first 3 picks, and then my next 3 were all running backs. So I'm even looking pretty good. My QB might be Blake Bortles or something by the time I pick again, but
pretty sure he's retired. But and Gus, you can't forget, we got a bunch of great submissions this week on some fish stories from listeners for the quote unquote common man muskie segment. So it'll be cool to share a few of those as well. But why don't you take us into a little bit on what you've been doing lately up in the Northwoods, how the fishing's been. Be curious to hear how it's all shaping up there. I know we're patiently waiting the kind of pre-fall, consistent cool down weather when you can get out there on the boat with that sweatshirt on, nice pair of jeans or whatever. And, that's prime time, it feels like. So I know we're just kind of waiting for that right now.
Yeah, I think it's in store. It's coming soon. Probably a lot sooner than we think. I think there's a little bit of warmth maybe coming back in the future weather, but there was a slight cool down this last weekend, and there's some red and orange and yellow happening in some of the trees. So that's already kind of happening up here. But this past week, it was good and then bad. There was not really much in between. It was probably for the first time probably since early June, where I had a week of either the fish bit or we didn't see pretty much anything for a little while. And that made fishing tough to kind of stay, I don't know, in tune with what you're doing and not like slacking off or something like that. I had a few guide trips, I think, and we were very successful during them, but there was times in the middle of them where it was just tough. I mean, I couldn't get fish to follow. Tried a lot of bucktails to hopefully get some feedback or some fish into the figure eight for the clients to see that, but they just were not. I mean, it was tough. Also, in my spare time, I spent a lot of time fishing trophy bodies of water, and unfortunately, none of those happened to get a trophy. But that's why we do it. That's why I try, and tried that with some buddies here and there. But
Let me ask you this real quick, Gus. Did you do anything? Do you break any like different tactics out of the box this weekend when fish weren't moving, or did you kind of try to stick to the same game plan that had been working in previous weeks?
there was a new tactic that I haven't done almost ever. There's one morning with clients, we broke out double top water. It was just so juicy that we had to, and got two on top water that morning. So that was pretty cool.
That's crazy.
Nice.
I've been begging to do that for years. Turns out it works.
I know it does work. It's insane what like perfect humidity and fog and cloud cover and slight
Were they
chop
both
and
flaps or what kind of top?
no, actually the flap tail's been quiet lately. It only got a boat side blow up in the past few days, but it was the Suick Nightwalker again. That thing just plopping along. Yeah.
Figured
One
it
of
would
them-
come back to play at
Yeah,
some
one
point
of
in time
them
this
hit
year.
way out, probably plopped 3 times before that fish hit, and then the other one was about halfway back, and neither of them followed the bait. They just took it down, So that's the way you want it to happen, and that was pretty cool to see. Put up some pretty gnarly fights. These fish are all going crazy once you get them hooked, but it seems like the fish are flying out of everywhere with the water temps being in like that. I don't know. It dropped into like 68-ish with some of that cold front, but it's been fluctuating between like 69, 70, 71, give or take a few degrees up and down. But trying to think of other tactics that were kind of brought out. I mean, bucktails are kind of the king on at least getting bites. I mean, I think I was throwing bucktails earlier in the week because still really sore from vermilion, casting a lot and just fishing really hard. So I just wanted to be easy on myself, and it just so happened that they were hitting bucktails on the Tuesday night league, which that was the last night of Tuesday night league, and my partner Clayton could not be there for the last week, so my dad subbed in, and we went 2 for 4, saw a couple others, and our teammates also got one. So we brought in 3 fish for the whole team that night, and we closed it off with a first place finish for Tuesday night league. So that was pretty cool.
Had a
That
kid.
was yeah. We got that done, and thankful for that because Monday Night League has been going not great. We've been struggling on the Monday nights, but that's all right. Still
Can't win
having
'em all.
fun.
Can't win 'em all,
can't win
man.
them all. Still having fun out there. Other than that, no, not a whole lot has changed except for now the weather this weekend. It put a kind of twist and turns. I mean, the water temps were fluctuating 5 degrees in less than 24 hours. So the fish are in a slight funk, and I'm kind of hoping for a little more consistent weather again, because last time we had consistency, we had consistent bites. And about the only other excitement this week is that I got to witness a quote unquote super tanker get unfortunately hooked and lost on a trip. So it was good to see a big fish. And
What kind of super tank are we talking?
well, I'll just spill the beans here. On this trip, I was on the chain, and as you know, on the Eagle River chain, it's not known for really big fish, and this is probably one of the biggest fish I've ever seen on the chain. So
Gee,
big fish in there.
Big fish in there. It got my eyes, popping out of my head, heart racing to turn around to grab the net, and before I could even look back, I saw that thing. It rolled on that. It hit a bucktail and it rolled on it, and oh my God, it went broadside. It was just one of those where like I've never seen that fish there before.
we're gonna start turning into the podcast of what ifs.
Yeah, I know.
Guys are great at moving fish.
Great at hooking and losing big fish. Would you say it was I I guess this is a little bit too much of an inside joke, but would you say over or under on the fish that Brian pulled the bait out of the mouth a few falls ago?
Oh boy. I
That
think
fish was only like 45.
whoa, yeah, right, dude. Comparable.
Whatever
We'll
whatever
say
makes you sleep
comparable.
at night.
We'll say comparable because this one, for those who fish the chain, typically you get a lot of greenies, a lot of sometimes some clean ones that are, not super light colored, but this one was a blonde beauty. So
Oof.
I kind of knew
So
she.
do you think it's some of those bigger fish are starting to slide up with the cooler weather? Because I know that's kind of the migration we're all waiting for.
Well, I think the lack of follows. So this is what I've kind of taken away from the weekend. Obviously, the turning weather, like changing almost hourly. I mean, there's no like consistency, is putting the fish in a funk for sure. But I have not really been marking much bait deep at all on the lakes that I've been fishing. I've been seeing definitely some bait holding to weed edges, but not as much as normal. And there hasn't been as many follows when fishing outer weed edges. And I know there's been fish taken there, but I think it's because some of these fish have finally slid into some of the shallower water where they're either going to see your bait zipping right by them and do nothing, which is why we're not getting follows, or they're going to absolutely crush it. Because there was another eat this past week where there's actually two. I had two splashdown eats on tubes in like 3-4 feet of water and the heaviest cover you can think of on the lake I was on. So I think some of these fish have really slid up. I think they're a little moody, but I think they're going to be very vulnerable and catchable, quote unquote, soon. And I think they're going to stick to a lot of shallow water if you're fishing mainly stained water. I've also been hearing some reports of a few people seeing and catching fish on sand on some clear bodies of water, but I haven't really spent a ton of time on clear water as of lately. So maybe I'll have more to speak on that soon. But we're gonna have a bunch of Q&A questions here coming up, and I think I probably accidentally answered a few of them. I know there were some that were similar to what we're just talking about right now. So maybe we can kick that off. And yeah, Max, you want to get the first question rolling?
Sure, we can roll them. We do have quite a bit tonight, so in our typical fashion of really like laboring on a few, we'll probably have to keep it a little tighter tonight. We don't think we've really done like almost a full ep of just like Q&A and musky stories. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Let's just roll it. Start out with one here. Could be a quick one. Dropo93, thanks for writing in. He asks, would you rather fish the Madison Metro or Minneapolis Metro lakes?
Ooh, who wants to start on this one?
I can go because I don't have a ton of experience with either. Fished the Metro Lakes in Minneapolis once a couple of years ago. I lived there for a year. And I just not a huge fan of Minneapolis. Like Madison as a city a lot more. And you guys had great success down there in the PMTT. So I would say Madison Lakes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you here, even though we had a lot of fun down in Madison at the PMTT and got to obviously experience the possibility of some super big fish coming out of Madison and a lot of fish down there as we saw kind of pre-fishing and whatnot. But after this whole Vermilion experience, I would really love to chase some more very large Leech Lake fish. And I think maybe I'm more a little biased just because I live here in the cities. I'd love to get out and fish those metro lakes here more often because every year you hear of really big fish being taken out of all these lakes that are, I mean, essentially right in my backyard. So I'd probably go metro just because, some of the lakes here are got a little bit more room. I know they're really heavily pressured just as Madison is, but it would be fun, especially I think getting out there during the fall, whatnot on like Minnetonka or something like that. One of the bigger bodies of water here would be a lot of fun.
I think I'm gonna have to agree with Brian here. I'm gonna go with Madison. I think it's got the best of both worlds, seeing that it's got a lot of fish and really big fish, and I know you're talking about Leechers Max. It's not their home water, but they got the Leechers in Madison as well, so they can have some very, very large fish. And Brian, I'm really surprised you didn't talk about the chances of bycatches. I mean, there's some pretty gnarly sized pike in the Madison chain. That'll keep your line tight, throughout the
Yeah,
day.
when you go through those 5 hour lulls without any muskie, and you just want to feel something. I mean, Madison can definitely provide that.
Yeah, and another thing, if you could only fish one or the other, is that Madison you can fish until like, I mean, ice up is late, and you can start
True.
early since it's southern Wisconsin. So I'm gonna pick Madison on this one.
All right. Yeah, no, good answer. All right, moving on to Braxton Steedle. Steidle. I apologize if I get some of these names wrong. Blame it on the root beer. He says, what is your biggest tips for a drastic warm up this time of year? Be curious to hear your thoughts on that one, Gus, because that is something that hits close to home on us the last few years. For whatever reason, September has just churned out some very warm weeks and weekends that are very welcomed in the month of like late June and July. Feels like fish kind of turn on, but it feels almost like when you get into the fall months that those huge drastic warm-ups can really make things difficult. And if you need a few seconds to think on it, I guess my only thing would be, if you do have some big warm-ups in the fall, the one thing we've noticed is typically it's been a great time to catch tigers for whatever reason.
Yeah.
We've had success on specifically live bait and tiger muskies during fall warmups, and that's, I don't know what the biological nature behind that is, but I think it's been pretty consistent over the last few years. Feel like we've caught a big tiger in September when it heats up.
I think I'm gonna have to go with I'm gonna bring out just a few options, and I'm trying to think off the top of the head on what we've had success on. I know for a fact it doesn't not typically are we seeing great like bucktail action. I don't know. You could get an anomaly. I know in the past we've also like put on a massive flaptail and move some fish. That's maybe another anomaly, or maybe a good option to just like seek out some fish. But for actual catching, you're gonna have to go start and stop for sure. I mean, what comes to my mind right away is rubber, just being silent. I'm also thinking about calmer weather. Usually when it gets really extra hot in the fall, it's usually followed by no wind days or very low wind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when definitely soaking a sucker can benefit your day, or kind of just like slowly approaching structure and popping rubber, working a glide bait or a dive and rise through some, heavy cover. I mean, we've seen also like the quote unquote Indian summer in the fall where for absolutely no reason, not no reason, sorry, we'll see that these fish slide up kind of shallow, which is, against all fall transitions where you think like, oh, they're all on steep breaks, and then you'll struggle on these types of days. So it's, worth a look on going a little shallow in certain cases and kind of just picking apart. Say you got a good steep shoreline or a good area where you've seen them in the fall or seen them in the past, just work it deep and then go work it shallow and kind of go from there, if you get feedback. So I think that's my advice there on if it heats up quite a bit, because that can just be tough, especially if the water temps fluctuate so much. That's when fishing can just get very, very difficult because the fish are just overstimulated with water temp change and weather change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree, especially on that dive and rise point. I feel like the Naven has really shined for us on some of those warmer fall days. Very slow moving, kind of natural presentation. I know that we've gotten some nice fish on that bait. So yeah, hopefully that helps out if when we inevitably have our 10-day stretch of 80-degree weather this September. All right, Gus, this question's geared more towards you. Comes from Latin Dressy Guide Service, Leighton Dressy Guide Service. Do you know how to pronounce that, Gus?
I'm unsure.
Okay, well, hit us up if we botched it. But he asked, guiding. Let's hear some stories. Heartbreak. Any funny stories? Goal achieve. It doesn't have to be relative to size. For you this past year.
This past year, well, I've gotten a good number of first muskies this year again, which is amazing to see. I absolutely love seeing that. But I'm gonna talk about the goal achieved, and that's when I took out a 90 or 91-year-old Frank out on the boat, and he's caught muskie in the past, but he hasn't been fishing in, I think he said, a good 10 or so years. And he came out with me, and we, saying that not size related, this is relative to this because it was by no means a big muskie, but got him a muskie at the very young age for Frank, because he was pretty, talkative that morning and can move around, and he casted the whole time. So that was an awesome goal to achieve. Also got a few first muskies, like I say. One of them, which I think I'm actually going to post here soon on social media, or maybe it's going to be out by the time this podcast is a young man came to catch some muskie, and his first two muskies were tigers. He has still not caught a purebred muskie. Both of his first were tigers, and one of them was like an eighth of an inch short of a 40-inch tiger. So that was pretty cool to see. And I guess if we're talking heartbreaks, it would probably be that super tanker that was just lost this past week. That was the biggest fish lost on the year, unfortunately. And it just,
How did the client handle that?
I think handled pretty well. I mean, they were after their first muskie, so seeing as their first hit on a lure was that big is not easy, because there's
you tell them it might be the last time they see a fish that big the next decade.
I know I can't say anything like that. I gotta, like keep it even keeled, being like, oh no, that's
We'll get the next one.
We'll get the next one. We'll get another shot.
Oh man,
which is tough because it was in like the last 20 minutes of the trip. So
that's got to be tough when your client like misses a big fish like that, and you're just sitting there going like, oh my God, like you might not get that chance for a really long time again.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, there's nothing they could have done differently, really. I mean, just I think the fish hit weird or something. When I saw that thing roll, and he set the hook pretty well in my eyes, and just the bait didn't stick in. I don't know. That was a weird one, but a big fish nonetheless.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I got a question that I think Brian's gonna really like. We got another one from our boy Poorly Made Musky Memes.
Shout out Poorly.
Shout out
Poorly.
Shout out. He wrote in what is everyone's go-to casting spot for muskies? Grass, cabbage, structure, etc. So Brian, I'm gonna let you kick this off. What's your
where do I start?
You're going out on the water, it's 8 a.m. You're by yourself. You don't have Gus telling you where you gotta go fish. You don't have me giving you shit. Where are you going? Where's Brian Eckel going on 8 a.m. to go catch a muskie?
When? Like, are we talking like mid-August, mid-September?
I mean, I don't know if that really matters to you, does it?
That's true. They're always shallow, but no. Okay, so let's change up the question you asked. Let's say it's first light. All right, first light. I get out on the lake by myself, and I'm probably keying in on some slop, some choked out weeds, right? Cruising a flap tail over them. There's gonna be fish there. They're gonna be waiting to eat. And when I was younger, I used to love the trees. You get in that timber, that freshly fallen big pine tree laying off the shoreline.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's right off the highway. Those fish stop by there all the time. It's just such a small area though anymore. It's tough to really fish unless the whole shoreline's laced in trees. But I got to go with a thick weed bed. There's really nothing better.
Yeah, no, I could have predicted that answer.
Thick cabbage.
Okay,
I am surprised that you never said anything about a dock.
No docks, no lily pads.
Forgot.
Like, what's
in
going
between
on?
the thick cabbage is a bunch of docks.
Gus, what about you? What's your favorite structure to fish on, or cover, I should say?
Um, I that was a roundabout way of Brian saying it, but I gotta say just cabbage. I love fishing through thick green, cabbage of any kind, the broadleaf cabbage or the tobacco cabbage and green and this and that, all the cabbage. That's probably my favorite to run anything through. Bucktails, rubber, topwater, cranks, diving rise, you name it. So that's what I'm
Yeah.
going with.
Yeah, I mean, I probably agree. I mean, there is something cool, especially like if you're fishing in a weed bed to like really feel skillful or try to feel skillful about it and like pick it apart and throwing a diving rise, letting it touch some weeds and then float rise back up and repeat the process. Like I think that part of it's cool. But I'll say this, like a really close second for me is coming up on this fall time when we start throwing some of the bigger rubber baits kind of off the deeper edges and letting them sink. And the reason why I like it so much is like just getting crushed out of nowhere on a big rubber bait and deep open, structure, whether it's like rocks or just a steep break or whatever. I just think it's cool because like a lot of times, those fish aren't following. So it's like you're either just seeing them or you're not. And by seeing them, I mean they're hitting. And a lot of times too, and like you get crushed out there and deeper water, sometimes those fish kind of stay down a little bit longer and kind of keep you guessing as to how big they are for a little bit of time. So yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I would agree. I always look forward to throwing big rubber. Don't always like get the right, opportunity throughout the summer if you're fishing choked out weeds to throw big rubber. But I think more so than just, like fishing weeds, there's gotta be fish. For me, it helps me stay engaged, locked in when I'm like pinpointing casts, trying to hit certain spots, in
Right.
between weeds or next to a dock. It keeps me engaged on my next cast. And like, don't get me wrong, I love ripping a Susie sucker off sandgrass in 20 feet, but after like a while, it's just cast repeat,
yeah,
cast repeat.
yeah. If you're not getting bites, doing that can get really old really quick.
Yeah.
And I know we're just kind of going around on like every single type of structure now, so just like we probably just really like catching muskies. But there isn't like, I mean, one of the cooler feelings too is like when you're throwing a big crankbait or even a small one, you're ticking rocks and it's like tick, 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 and then pow, and you get smashed. I mean, that's pretty cool way to fish too for muskies. I mean, there's just a lot of different ways to do it. So
In
yeah,
summary, all the above.
yeah, just every way to catch a muskie is fun. And he doubled his question too, and I thought this was interesting, a little bit fitting for a name. So I think you can kind of interpret this how you want, but he's like, what beer types would you equate to musky fishing? So like what beer would you equate to like getting skunked? What beer would you equate to catching a big fish? I mean,
Interesting.
I'd probably go Bud Light for getting skunked.
Fish sticks.
I think for me, a nice heavy crafted IPA for just like a stout 44-inch fish,
Yeah, yeah. I would say maybe a little blue moon for that nighttime top water, a little pick under
Ooh,
the moon
I
there.
like that. That's
But
nice.
probably a warm keg of hams for a fish that comes off once it's hooked.
Some Milwaukee's best
Oof. Right.
for lost fish. Oh man.
I might
Gus,
have
I
to
don't know
just.
if you caught a 50, it'd probably be a peach bush.
I was
I'll
just
bet.
about, you got the options A, B, C, D, but I'm going E, all of the above for bushlight peach, lost fish,
Mm,
big fish, a fish, seen a
just get
fish.
you a bushlight peach.
Yeah, just get you a bushlight peach. It's like, oh, I just missed one. Bushlight peach.
There you go. That's good stuff. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting question. All right, we got Musky Mike Outdoors. Shout out Musky Mike Outdoors.
Shout
Thanks
out.
for
Shout
thanks
out.
for writing in. Shout out Musky Mike. He asked, go-to lure on a new body of water.
Man, that's
Like,
I mean, just to
that
like
is
look for
tough.
fish or like he doesn't give
No,
any
it's like
time of
I think it's
year or
more
like
like a confidence thing. Like if you were going out on a new body of water, like is
oh
there a go-to bait that you're just like gonna go grab? Is like okay, I feel like pretty confident I can at least get a fish to move on this bait. You see like what's in here kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of two because I'd flip flop between the two for a while, and it would just be like a regular bulldog and then a tube with a trailer blade. Because the bulldog I feel like is the little more subtle one, hopping that around, and then the tube you get a little more aggressive, having the blade in back, get a little more, calling fish from a little further away, and those are the two that I'd probably bounce around. I don't know. I know some people would maybe choose bucktail, and I had that option maybe if I'm just looking to find fish on a new body of water, but I'm gonna stick to rubber for mine. Those two
I
baits.
I think it kind of changes per year. Like each year we kind of seem to find like a few baits that always seem to just move fish and they're like consistently productive. Maybe it's
Yeah.
relative to just like being in, like Vilas County lakes, they're all fairly similar and maybe, based on color, watercolor, whatever it might be, that bait just looks good. So I don't know. I'll just say whatever your confidence bait is this year, whatever you've had the most luck on, throw that on. It'll probably keep you engaged more when your confidence is up. It just feels like you're more likely to catch a fish. So if it were me though, I probably be like Gus. I mean, bucktail just to see if they're hot and active, try and move them out of the weeds. Otherwise, yeah, probably a mag dog.
And I'd say this year that trigger has been, I mean, it's kind of been the return of the bucktail for us this year. I'd say that 7-9 trigger for me, as far as getting fish to come and dance with you in the 8 or calling them in. For whatever reason, that 7-9 combo has just been deadly in the Northwoods for seeing fish. I mean, I remember just a few weeks ago when we got onto that big new body of water we had never fished, and I put on it was a Suggs custom 7-9. And I mean, within the first 15 minutes, we had fish up and moving around. So yeah, I don't know. I'd probably go with the 7-9 trigger this year. I just think that size is so good for fish to follow in. It's not overbearing, I feel like, for them, and it makes that really, really loud kind of grindy noise in the water. Rides relatively high, so it's easy to fish. So yeah, I think it's been a good one.
Yeah, I'll elaborate a little bit more on what I was saying with like each year we seem to have a different confidence bait. Was that like 2 years ago? The RJ bucktail. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 years ago, Gus, I think, found that bait for the first time and it was money on the chain. And then it seemed to work in other various lakes in the area really well for us. And it was like a confidence bait of, that year and still is. We've caught fish on it this year. So just figuring out, what you have confidence in and what works at one area lake will, might translate to the next lake nearby.
Those bucktails are so good, dude. I mean, it's like, I mean, the one we have double 10s in it now. We got, I mean, the one that you're talking to is a double 8. And Gus, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's deer hair, right?
Correct. Yeah.
It's natural, it looks really natural in the water. They're typically smaller profiles. And I feel like, when you look in people's boats now or see what they're throwing bucktail wise, a lot of people are throwing tinsel. And so I don't know, maybe something about a little bit different of a profile with the deer hair.
Yeah, it's super slender. So yeah. I mean, a lot of people's are, big bucktail, marabou, whatever, tinsel, and I think it matches the forage a lot better for a lot of those up north smaller lakes.
Yeah, that's a little secret buck. I mean, it's not a secret bucktail. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have it, but if you're looking for a new one, I would probably recommend,
RJ.
Yeah, putting one of those in your boat. Shut up.
Yeah, the eights and 10s have done well for us this year, and just so happens, don't mean to bring it up again, but that big fish loss this week was on the double 8 RJ.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
All right. It still works.
Still works. It's the same one as the first one bought a few years ago. That thing's got a couple. Yeah. I think it came with a lot of different colors and it's down to like 2 colors. The blades have changed to pretty much all silver and all the paint's just like gone.
Yeah, that's when you know that lure. I mean, anytime you see a lure that looks like that, man, those are the ones that work the best.
Oh yeah.
All right, moving on to our residential Instagram troll / really good friend, Grape Wake.
Shout out Grape.
Shout out Grape. he threw a few questions at us. I think I'm just going to limit it to one since a few of them are NSFW. So I'm going to
Sheesh,
go
Grape.
on.
Easy
Yeah,
Grape.
If Grape makes his way back onto the pod here soon, we'll have to fire his own questions back at him, see if he's got any answers.
the man's unhinged, man. The guy catches a 50 and he's just all bets are off. And even this question, I don't know what he's saying. He asks, what termy tacky do you recommend for different lures? Rubbers versus blades, leader size, etc. Termy tacky.
I think he's talking about terminal tackle.
That'd be correct. He's doing that to save time, though.
Oh yeah, right.
That's true. He saved a lot of time there. Thanks for the question, Grape. We'll just do a quick breakdown on the terminal tackle that I like to run. And I think in a earlier podcast, I talked about that I do not use fluorocarbon for casting. I just run straight wire AFW for glide baits, crankbaits, dive and rise, bucktails, and topwater. I make those my own. I typically make a 10 to 12 inch for the larger crankbaits and dive and rise. And then I typically use about a 7-inch or so leader for topwaters, smaller glides, cranks, and dive and rise, along with bucktails as well. And then for rubber, I strictly go with the flexible wire, I don't know how many strands it is again, but it's like the multi-strand wire. And I run either the 12-inch or the 18-inch, and that does the trick there. It can usually last for many fish. It's got a coating on it, and if you start seeing some fraying or the coating's gone and you see like a fray happening with your leader, that's when I change it. And for trolling, I do run the 3-foot fluorocarbon leaders. So that is the terminal tackle tips for you, Grape. Thanks for the question. All right, the next question we got in. Hopefully I pronounce your, I believe, last name correctly. I just have the Instagram handle here. It's John Crumpsig. Sorry if I butchered that. I probably really butchered that. But he says, what causes the fall shallow sand bite to start? Is it still good as it used to be? John, that I know is a very famous happening over in Minnesota, and we've seen it sometimes here in Wisconsin, and I know it happens throughout everywhere in the early fall transition, but I think it's just when the water temps start to dip a lot more, and it's kind of just inevitable. Like it's not just like an exact calendar date, and it's not an exact water temp, because as you know, during the season, it's not that every single fish in the whole system migrates at the same time. So it's kind of something that I'll just start to check actually pretty much right now, as in late August, and checking very shallow sections of typically like the bottoms of points closest to land. There's kind of some sand on them that'll start to check and get some baits over up in 1 to 3 feet, and then work down a point just to double check. And that's just when you start getting these cold snaps. I mean, I'm checking the super shallow. If deep weed edges and just weeds in general aren't working, that's when I'm gonna probably go try some areas that's either current related, which will be some shallow fish, or going for fish in and around reeds. I don't find them up there all the time, but that's just some places that I'm gonna check in case, the typical weed bite's not really happening. So I'll probably be relaying on that a little bit more in the next, I would probably say 4 weeks, on how any of the sand, shallow gravel, or inside weed edge bite is going to go. And so far it's kind of starting. So definitely be watching out for that. I mean, the temps are in the low 70s right now, but I think it's going to be more of a thing when it drops below 70.
Yeah, that inside edge bite definitely turns on, that inside weed edge bite. I think that's kind of what we almost equate the sand bite probably in Minnesota too here, because it is, a lot of times you'll actually have a stretch of sand before the weeds start in Wisconsin. And I know we've pulled some fish over the past few years off of that really shallow inside weed edge kind of areas. So, I mean, I think back to fish our dad caught a few years back, and we were getting to a spot that we typically fish this spot like starting at where we were just to like kind of get set up and kind of get into the groove. And it was like right away, I think I was putting the trolling motor in pretty much, and he popped a nice fish up shallow. So yeah, I mean, now's the time, when that weather starts to cool down, get excited to start checking some of that really shallow water areas. And be surprised at how big a fish will sit up there in
Yeah.
1 to 3 feet of water.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I know at least from kind of hearing about that Minnesota bite, we don't have that like really vast inside edge, massive, expansive bulrush beds. At least, so I'll say that, rephrase this. The lakes that I typically fish don't have this. I can think of a few off the top of my head that there are bites on that are very, very similar to Minnesota, and I haven't exactly witnessed them myself yet, nor have I really tried them. So typically when we go on the inside edge, it's pretty much, we're going to equate it to like that decaying weed inside slop edge pretty much. And that's typically going to be sometimes popping a Suic or a Navin extremely shallow, or hoping for a good bucktail topwater weather. And that's definitely how we're going to get them. So that is all happening right now. And we are going to move on to the next question. And this one comes from On the Fly 86. What are your rules for water clarity and or cloud cover and lure color selection? On the Fly 86, that is a good question. Typically with watercolor, if it's clear, I'm going to say what everyone else usually says, and definitely going to go natural a little bit on that. I definitely like getting the whites out there. Browns, I mean, anything that's just going to resemble the forage that you're in. It's probably more of a confidence thing on a clear water, just because you know that those fish can see the baits better, see them from further away. You want to just be a little bit more subtle and natural. Whereas if it's muddy or just like a dark stained or green bloomed, that's when I'm going all black, or like noisy oranges, noisy chartreuses, and typically going with also a louder bait. So that's what I got. Do you guys have anything else to add on there?
I would agree. I mean, if it's just conditions wise, if it's cloudy and a little bit darker out, I would go dark. And then if it's sunny and high skies, something more reflective in the water that's going to kind of deflect those light beams around, like a bright orange, or a crankbait with some reflective tape on the side, just something to shape the light maybe.
I would also add with maybe if I'm thinking about blades, and if they're going to be either a metal blade or like a metallic, like shiny blade, or a painted blade. It's typically painted during cloud cover or darker conditions, and something shiny and bright for sunny conditions, but still be sure to switch it up. Because I can remember on the top of my head, there was one day where I was using a Frenzy Stagger, and I think it had both blades painted, and it was getting hit and follows when it was bright and sunny, but it was like intermittent sun and clouds. So definitely just don't be afraid to kind of go against the grain on some of those things. There's no hard, fast rules there at all, but those are kind of just the general rules that I tend to follow on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and not to be I don't want to be repetitive, so I would say the only thing that I would add as far as being really specific, and this is more partial to just what I like, but when it's sunny out, love throwing gold blades. I think gold blades look really good when the sun's shining. I don't know, for whatever reason, and again, that's just a personal confidence thing. I think it always just looks so good in the water when it's sunny out, just having those two big gold blades flashing around. And also probably lean more tinsel when it's hot, or not hot, but sunny. Do like throwing more tinsel type bucktails and stuff when it's sunny.
Oh
But
yeah.
everything else I echo. I agree. I agree with everything else you guys said.
Definitely agree with all that. So let's move on to the next question, and that comes from Instagram user Fluff Too Tough Running. Thanks for the question, Fluff. I know you sent in one prior podcast as well. He asks, how close to a major / minor should I go fish my spots or waypoints? Is 45 minutes too early? I'd say going to your waypoints is there's never a bad time there. I would kind of equate the major, minor, peak to either going back on a fish you raised the day before or that day. And if you don't have a fish raised that day, then I would just keep popping around your favorite spots and kind of go from there in between the majors and minors. I mean, one thing that we found out is that we haven't really learned a lot if you fish a new spot not during like a peak bite window, because then you'll fish a new spot and maybe it's an amazing spot, but you just hit it like at the wrong time because you were just not fishing your waypoints during not peak, and then you wait for peak to fish your waypoints. If that makes any sense, kind of on finding fish, but
Is he saying like 45 minutes from like peak major, 45 minutes before peak major? Is he saying like 45 minutes before like that 2 hour major?
doesn't specify, but maybe I would think he just said, he asked again, how close to a major / minor should I go fish my spots or waypoints? Is 45 minutes too early? I don't think there ever is too. That's what I was kind of explaining, that there's
Yeah.
never too early, I don't think.
I mean, we've just noticed a ton of like, oh my God, that fish hit right at the start of the major or right at peak or right
Yeah.
at the end. So it seems like kind of those 3 points is when we always seem to look down and be like, oh, that was 3 minutes after the major started or 3 minutes before it ended or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, we've had too many weird circumstances where fish hit, I mean, to the minute almost on peak, either
Yeah.
peak major, minor, or like you said, right on the either tail end or right at the beginning. If you have a big fish move during the morning and you have a major coming up, I mean, yeah, I would say right when that major starts, just get on that spot if that's a fish you're really trying to catch. And another thing too, I mean, I don't know if you guys are buy into what Clayton was talking to us about on the podcast he was on, but I kind of get down with it. I mean, he was saying, not all majors and minors are created equal. So like if he prefers to fish when the moon's down. And so if you have a moon rise, you might want to spend a little bit more time fishing those areas that there's fish at prior to that moon coming up. And even though typically the major, that minor will be on the back end of it too, maybe try to really focus more on the beginning. If it's like a moon rise, try to spend time before that moon comes up.
Yeah, to touch on that thing Clayton was talking about with the moon up and moon down. Just tonight, I hopped out fishing with Dad, and we were fishing the Moonrise Minor, and went out there. We're just gonna fish the full hour of it, and maybe a little bit before and a little bit after. But popped a small fish on a tube before technically the quote unquote minor started, but it was that hour leading up to the moonrise, and then had another one like a low follow on a tube where it danced around the 8 like 4 or 5 turns, had it on side image the whole time, but the water was too murky to ever see it. And then the moon was up and we didn't see a thing. And, just called it after that 30, 40 minutes after the moon was up. And at least that's what and there's no significant weather change whatsoever.
Yeah, well, maybe Clayton knows a thing or two.
I think he does. Should probably listen back on that podcast to I guess welcoming the new listeners. Definitely recommend going back to one of our older podcasts with Clayton Speece. I believe it was the week after the PMCC or something, and we had an awesome time talking with him. All right, now to our final question, and this comes from Kyle Scruggs. Kyle asked, if conditions are post-frontal and fish are acting more negative and neutral, and you mark one on side image, will you sit and pick that spot apart, or will you run and gun and search for more active fish? This is a good question, and I can kind of equate it to conditions that we have been dealt in tournament situations. And our game plans typically when they are very tough or the weather's not moving, I have found that running and gunning kind of stinks, at least for us. We have just kind of done the stick and stay and make them pay. I would highly suggest just like picking that spot apart. That's like my favorite thing to do is with the weather being tough, just like keep the trolling motor off, pick a few casts apart, turn it on again for a little bit, pick a few more casts, and just kind of work slowly through spots, especially if they're negative and neutral. I feel like, I mean, I know you guys, when the bite's really tough, you kind of have in the back of your mind, like, oh, well, first of all, like, am I throwing the right bait? But the other thing is like, how close do I have to get this lure to a fish for it to either move on it or eat? And when they're negative neutral, I got to think you got to get that lure super close. If you're going really fast, running, gunning, and having a lot of space between your casts, there's just a higher percentage of you, not getting across the fish. And especially if they're negative and neutral, you're not maybe going to move them if you're moving too fast and your bait's moving too fast. So I know I like to pick a spot apart for sure. And from what I've seen this year, either stretches of spots or sides of lakes or specific weed beds have been holding multiple fish pretty much throughout the whole year. So I will definitely pick a spot apart or fish it 2-3 times in a row, 100%.
I do have one question I wanted to grab just because I want to see what your guys' answer to this would be. It is from Latin Jury's Guide. He asked one earlier, but this one he asked, what is your bucket list fishing trip outside of Musky?
Did we do this question already earlier in a pod? I can't remember. It
No,
sounded
that was
familiar.
bucket list Musky spots. This is like all their species.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean,
Ooh, I have a few, I think.
yeah, I would say I think the clear cut answer for me, I also have a few, but I think the clear cut answer for me would be backwater tarpon fishing with a fly rod. I think that's just probably would be the coolest thing.
Yeah.
I think that'd be my number
That's
one.
up there. That's up there for sure.
I'll continue on your fly note, and Gus, you might have to help me with this species name, but I always see them on my Instagram. They're in South America, I believe. I think they're called like a Dorado. They're the
golden
big
Dorado.
yellow.
Yep, in those rivers. Yep.
Yeah, they're like native to Brazil or somewhere in South America. And the fly fishing videos I see on my Instagram are wild, and these fish look crazy. So that would be a kind of far-fetched bucket list trip that would require a lot of planning and probably be a lot of risk involved.
Yep, I was just double checking that I was not just like speaking out of my ass on that one. It is a golden Dorado, native to Central and East Central South America. That thing looks beastly. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be one you'd have to mount. They're gorgeous.
Of course, my moving on. I am gonna, of course, all my bucket lists are also with the fly. One of them I might get the location wrong. Maybe no, I think it's in Mongolia. They have the taimen, which is like the world's largest and longest trout on those rivers.
They kind of look like muskie, like a trout muskie hybrid.
They're huge. It's like it's like a salmon on steroids that's like a trout. I don't know. It's ridiculously. They get like, I don't even know how long they get because I'm horrible with converting the normal metric system as opposed to like whatever America uses.
Pretty sure there's ways to do that.
Yeah, well, yeah, it just
hasn't been discovered yet.
I don't really know how to use Google up here in the Northwoods. We just kind of, as I'm Googling,
hasn't hit the Northwoods yet.
Yeah, as I'm Googling like where that fish location is.
Where is that fish? I didn't hear you unless you didn't say it. Like, where's the go-to spot for them?
I think I said Mongolia, but I think it's a few other countries in that area.
Sounds right.
Jeez. What are you sipping on again, Max?
Don't worry about it, kid.
Um. Anyways, I got a quick slip in there. The GT trip on a fly, the giant
Ooh, yeah,
Trevally.
fly
Yeah,
or conventional. The big poppers they throw for those is crazy.
yeah. Like I would want to
Australia or
be.
something.
I think so. I think that's one of the common ones. But all I ever see is just like a video of a guy like with a fly rod in hand, like walking the flats, and then just having
Yeah,
this GT in his, once he catches it in his hands, and it's like it's as tall as it is long, and it's
yeah.
I don't even know.
Oh
They're just
man,
ridiculous.
sounds wild. It's funny that all of our like destinational trips are on fly rods.
Yeah. It does add a new thrill to the sport. And I mean, you can catch, not that all those fish wouldn't be catchable on conventional, but I think fly definitely opens the door to a lot of different presentations that maybe make it
Yeah,
easier than
it's just
conventional would.
it's like hand to hand combat. You just got to
Yeah.
be way closer and more into it, I
Skillful.
guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I had a I had a trip earlier this summer with an awesome group. It was a dad and his son and then nephew, and they were looking for their first muskie, and the son got his first muskie ever, and he was like super stoked, and the dad's like a hardcore fly fisherman, and this day just happened to be calm and sunny, and I'm thinking like, dude, you just get that fly rod out and cast it around. Like I'm curious. I want to see what happens. And he the first excitement on that is I got to see like an 18, 19-inch walleye attempt to eat his fly boat side. So that was outrageous and a new thing to see. And not too much further down that stretch, if I want to say, or maybe we turned down to kind of like do that stretch again. He hooked what seemed to be a hefty fish, and just he had it on for a few seconds, and then it popped off, and I remember just like looking at the bend of the rod, and I'm like, oh my God, that I think that was a nice fish. And he was like shaking, and he was just like completely hooked because he was just trying it for the first time ever, and he's like, that worked. Like, this is awesome. I'm
It does.
so hooked in
It
doing
is like
that.
extra rewarding. Like
Yeah.
you have low
Hmm.
expectations. I mean, we've caught some small ones on it, but to tangle with even like a high 30 to low 40 on the fly would be pretty wild.
Yeah. It'd be
No
fun. I
doubt.
feel like you could do that. Maybe build that into the repertoire a little bit this fall, especially with some of those fish up shallow. Might be the time to actually do it a little bit more.
That's
Yeah.
true. Because yeah, some of those days it's not speed. Like some of those days we're having pull pause outings of getting fish. So I think a fly would be
Yeah,
kind
that'll
of
be some
sweet.
good GoPro content if one of us can hook into something of good size on the fly and tangle with a boat side, trying to get the net under it.
Oh man, that'd be
Be a
awesome.
shit show, but
Yeah.
awesome nonetheless. I believe that's it for the night on Q&A, boys.
I feel like
I
this is a
think
good episode if you're like out mowing your lawn or you're really bored on a car trip.
Yeah, sorry for yeah, we don't have the big old content of having like a big time interview this week. It's tough to get it every week. Quick shout out to Jeff Widman again for them getting like somebody on every single week. That's dedication right there. 200 and how many episodes?
Oh man,
Dude,
a lot of
that's
planning.
unreal. Hmm.
Yeah.
all right. Well, thanks again, everybody who submitted questions this week. And now, without further ado, we'll get right into this week's Common Man Muskie segment presented by Max.
Real quick before we dive in, I wanted to open up the floor again to the name of the segment. I'm kind of wavering on it. I don't know. I know it's kind of gotten some traction now over the past few weeks, and that's how people are referring to. But I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts. If it needs a name change or anything, or you guys like it for what it is.
Well, I mean,
Ah,
as we're kind of looking through photos and seeing that these quote unquote common man muskies getting posted are, 54,
inches.
53, 57.
They're not so common fish, that's for sure.
Yeah, and nor common people either. So I thought the name. I was like thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know if I love the name. So
Maybe
It's-
that's what makes it great is it doesn't really fit the segment perfectly. And
True.
these people that are absolute sticks going out there and catching wall mounters are now the common man on the pod.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Brian and I like that's kind of what I guess our designation, if you will. So that's kind of where it all started was like we just wanted to hear stories of, people that don't do this for a living or, whatever. Just sending in because I feel like at least through seeing some of these, like you just always hear crazy stories when people are musky fishing. And I think they're kind of fun to share, So we'll keep it rolling. I mean, it's been good. We got a lot of submissions this week. So I'm gonna kick it off with a banger of a submission. It came from Knowles on the water. And
Shout out Knowles.
yeah, shout out Knowles. This thing is crazy. And also I'm
Shout
gonna
out.
post all the ones from that have been submitted probably on this Friday. So if you haven't seen yours on our Instagram, Musky's on Tap, shameless plug. Check out those on Friday after the pod drops this week. But Knowles on the water submitted a crazy 57-inch muskie.
What?
Taking on Lake Nipissing in Ontario.
Wow.
That's not the crazy part, though.
What?
Not the fact that it's 57 inches. It's the fact that he caught it on a 6'6" medium light with 8-pound test.
Oh my god.
Oh, of course. It's on. Did he get it hooked?
He's one of those guys.
Did it eat another species that he had hooked, or did he get it on like a night crawler?
So he was throwing a Berkeley flicker shad, and he hooked a bass. 57-inch muskie comes up and apparently just annihilates the bass and completely engulfs it. And he was able to manage to land the fish. And he
That's
said
unbelievable.
when he landed it, the bass was nowhere to be found.
Jeez.
Wow.
How didn't that line get severed between his teeth?
The grace of God.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
unreal.
this fish is giant. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't even imagine on some of our lighter musky tackle having even a hope and a prayer to land this fish. So
Yeah.
that's the type of shit we're talking about. Not a common angler there to finesse the fish of a lifetime in on 8-pound test. All right. Second submission is coming from McTavish Quilting. I believe she's got a shop out in Western Wisconsin. Great follow on Instagram. Seems to be a really diehard musky angler. She was up at Annie Meyer's Lodge in Canada a few weeks back. They caught a beautiful fish. Looks to be at least a 4-footer. But again, not the crazy part of this story is they actually saw this fish, kind of paddling around on live imaging, and it looked like the way she described it, it looked like there was a, plank of wood or something in the fish. So she described it that it almost looked like a fishing pole or a large plank of wood was like hanging out of this fish's mouth. So they could see the fish on live
On
imaging.
side imaging or
on
like
live imaging.
scope? Okay.
Live scope. Yeah. On live imaging. And, they ended up, the fish was acting weird or something in the water. And so they actually, purposely snagged the fish to see what was going on. Because they figured there was something wrong with it. And when they got it in, it was a long piece of line had been wrapped up inside its gill attached to a lure. And they ended up cutting the line, taking the lure out, and saving the fish.
Wow.
That's an unbelievable story. I've never heard
probably will
anything,
not get any
anything
more of
like
those
that.
stories this year. That's unbelievable. And I mean, that shows you how powerful live scope is that you can see something caught up in the fish.
Yeah, that's it's the other side of live scope. We've probably been a little bit too harsh on this podcast with live scope, and now here we are talking about how live scope save a fish's
live
life.
scope lovers, they're gonna be publicizing this story.
And I don't blame them. I mean, that's pretty unbelievable, to be honest. That is just too cool. thought this story was awesome too. So a gentleman that wrote in that the Latin dressy guide service who wrote in a question earlier, he was out at, I think it was a guide trip, and yes, it was a guide trip with him, a 6-year-old and his dad, and 6-year-old caught a 40.5-inch muskie all on his own.
Huh.
6 years old.
That's pretty badass. That's
Yeah, were they holding on to
pretty
his
sweet.
belt loops that he wouldn't go overboard?
I mean, look, I got an action shot and everything. It's pretty wicked. You know, he's got the life jacket on, just going ham on this fish. And you know what? I think the most commendable part about it is he's in the shot, solo hero shot with the fish. Nobody's holding it up for him. 6-year-old. I mean, this fish looks like it's 47 inches because he's, 6 years old. So
Looks like I could swallow him.
yeah,
He's got a bright future ahead in the fishing game if he's already holding a 40-inch muskie.
What do you think he was doing? Popping some rubber out there or what?
Ripping a pounder.
He's got the 10-foot extra heavy Stealth Thorn Bros rod, and he's working a husky Doosa,
Napping it over weeds.
Do you imagine seeing that from like another boat in the distance? Just like this little 6-year-old just snapping the crap out of
I'd
some
probably
rubber.
switch lakes. That's too intimidating. Like, what is he building over there?
From the pic, it looks like he is using like a Thorn 10-foot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's, again, just because he's 6 and it's like an 8-foot rod, but it did look like he was holding a giant setup, which is awesome. So and props to that guide for getting him through the steps. I mean, I don't know how much time he spent fishing prior to that or anything, but as we all know, and Gus especially, like when you're getting people into musky fishing, just the actual art of casting is tough.
Yeah, it's mad props. Definitely the guide, and another shout out to Logan again on just that beautiful fish. I mean, not to mention how gorgeous the fish looks too. It's like a really, really cool spots on it. It looks like a Minnesota spotted, I think. I'm not really sure, but
I think he might be out in the Dakotas, but he could have gone over to the western side.
Yeah,
of
that's
Wisconsin
right.
Too.
That's right. No, I think I saw Dakotas. And yeah, that is a very, very good looking fish. So shout out Logan.
Shout out. All right. Jim Gell, thanks for writing in. This is I call this 50 under the gun type muskie right here. So he went out on a guide trip on Lake St. Clair. There was some nasty weather rolling in. They figured they would try to get out there right before the storm. Always a risky move because the muskies are going to be snapping, but especially on a lake like Lake St. Clair. I mean, we saw it on Vermilion, man. Once that weather moves in and you're out there, it can be a dangerous game. So he said that they went out on this guide trip with weather moving in. 5 minutes into the trip, muskie 50 inches smoked a Ziggy olive frog trolling lure, and took him 15 minutes to land the fish. Got the pictures, released it, and took a 25-minute boat ride back to the Michigan side to beat out a massive storm by just a minute or two, he said.
Whew.
So
that'd be a fun sequence.
That's some freaking quick work, man. I mean, that's good shit right there. You're going out, put the lines in the water, pop a 50, and then race back home right before the storm hits. That's efficiency right there.
Oh, yeah.
Tim Weigel sent in some nice fish that he had caught. He said the first fish that he caught was my thank goodness I'm not going home without a fish in the bag again, muskie. So I thought that one was pretty relatable.
Oh my God.
He said he was
awesome.
getting ridiculed. He said he was getting ridiculed by family members for the dry spell that he was on. So I'm sure, Brian, you can relate to that.
Whoa.
Whoa.
He said to the just messing. He said to the point. He said it was to the point he didn't even want to go home because he was like, man, this is just tough. I'm spending all this time. I mean, you guys know how it is. Like, you go and fish for 8 to 10, 12-hour day. And if you don't catch a fish and you tell somebody that you went out and fished for 12 hours and didn't catch one, they're going to think that you don't know what the hell you're doing.
That happens with me and my roommate a lot. Like, we've had weekends where we're like, we just don't catch fish, and I'll come back and be like, yeah, we fished, 12 hours Saturday, 8 hours Sunday, a few hours Friday night, and we didn't catch anything. And he's like, dude, what? Like, go fish for walleye.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, he ended up getting one, ended his dry spell, a little slump busty, nice, like looked to be mid-30s fish. And then, as we know, man, when it rains, it pours. Right after that, he popped one off his dock, nice tiger muskie, and
Sweet.
added another fish to boot. So I ended up going home with 3 really nice muskies after being on a dry spell. There's just not much a better feeling than that.
Mm-mm.
And then lastly, gonna go to my guy Travis. Been DMing with him
Shout out Travis.
quite a
Shout
bit
out.
on Lake Vermilion. So Travis sent in some pictures. He actually put them on his story and tagged us. So now I'm looking back and I'm realizing that the pictures are no longer there. So I might have to reach back out to him and get those for when we post them. But I do remember there were 2 really nice, north of 50 vermilion fish. So again, just tantalizing to see, another people sending in some big fish that they caught on vermilion right after our trip. I think that trip seemed to, really hit home with some people. A lot of nostalgic people out there talking about vermilion and, talking about trips that they took 10, 15 years ago. And they, went out there in hopes to catch their biggest muskie, and they came home with a 54, 53-inch fish and just, crazy shit. So, yeah, man, already still joking around with these guys about when we're going to get back, but I am very much looking forward to getting back to that lake because, yeah, having the chance to catch a fish that big is just, it's just cool, being on a body of water like that. And that wraps it up for our Common Man Muskie segment, or Common Man TBD name Muskie segment. Appreciate you guys sending in all the pictures. Hope we get some more fish stories in for next week's pod. I really enjoy sharing those, and hopefully you guys enjoy hearing about them.
Love to hear it. Love seeing those pictures. Keep sending them in.
All right. Well, we'll probably send it off here with maybe just a few housekeeping items. Merch God, Brian, where are we at on the merch update, the weekly update? What's going on in the world of clothing?
We had a long conference call last week, and I think we finally figured it out. I think we finally buried the hatchet on all these options, and we're gonna have a big order coming through. It looks like we'll probably be receiving this shipment within the next 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometime within then. So soon. Stay tuned. We'll be sending out some teasers, and then we'll be having a giveaway probably next week or maybe in 2 weeks. We'll be doing a little giveaway for y'all. So stay tuned on that. We're really excited about it. We think we picked out the best quality hoodies, tees, and it seems like we finally dialed in exactly what we were hoping for. So it's just around the corner. Stay tuned a couple more weeks.
Should we drop the mystery item, the non-clothing related item that
Ooh,
is going to be for sale?
Drum roll.
Yeah, drum roll.
Yeah,
All right.
We're not good at this like promotion shit. So.
Oh, hang on, we got something.
Wait a second. We got something else for you guys. Brand new. I have never seen it before in the fishing industry. We are Muskies on Tap, so therefore we had to do some pint glasses with Muskies on Tap on it.
Nice, sick.
So come with a pre-filled beer,
pre-filled Busch Light Peach in it. So Be careful. Keep it the right side up. So that's some good news. That one is in the mail. That might be here before we even get any clothing, and also some stickers. So definitely be sure to be looking for those. And I cannot wait to get my hands on those and start sending them out. So thank you, Merch God, for the update. And I believe that's going to wrap it up for today's podcast. If you guys have anything else to add or no, not tonight.
I mean, we're gearing up for our big draft weekend. Brian, you want to touch on that? Give the people what we got going on this weekend. It's not fishing related.
We got a little fun. We got a little rambunctious crew going up north to Eagle River this weekend. Is it 12 of us in total this weekend?
Yeah.
12 of us in total. We have our annual fantasy draft and then our annual scramble match. That always gets super heated and super competitive. And I think Gus and I's team is now what 3-1 in history in the scramble.
Yeah, I think
No,
that's
But
right.
that
No,
ain't
is it
right.
two? We've won
I think
two.
last year was our first year we lost, I thought.
We've
Yeah, and
only
I
done
think
it twice.
No,
we've done it 3 times, I think. I think we
at
won it.
least, yeah.
I think we won it first 2 years
Yeah. So 2-1. Young guys are 2-1, but the old heads, Max and his crew, won it last year. They got a little bit of momentum. So we'll give you guys an update on who came out victorious on next week's pod. But you already know.
Oh, you're
who's
right. You're
coming
right. You're
back.
right. You're right. You guys have gotten 2. We've gotten 1. 3 years we've done it. I remember now. Yeah, we'll be looking to tie things up this weekend. But that's just a good time, man. I mean, I know this Musky podcast is centered around fishing, but it's also spending some quality time in the northwoods. And while we won't be getting probably too many lines wet this weekend, we're going to be having a lot of fun up in Eagle River. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, yeah, like Max said, not a whole lot of fishing in the weekend, but that's all right. We'll find the time and get you guys still a report on the following week. So I think if that's it, we'll wrap this podcast up tonight. And Ryan's famous outro,
Famous last words.
famous last words. What you got to say tonight, Brian?
All right, everybody. Well, look, we got a big Labor Day weekend ahead of us. I already completed a fantasy draft tonight. I'm sure much of you listeners have fantasy drafts coming up this weekend. Make sure to draft those Buckeyes, all reliable, best program in the country. They're going to be some players, the backbone of your teams, guys. Watch out for Zeke. He might be RB2. He's going to be RB1 by week 8.
No way.
We'll
The worst outro ever.
Good luck this weekend on the water, guys.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you to our troops on Labor Day. Peace.